All right, guys, what you just experienced is what we musicians refer to as a major fuck up.
Hello and welcome to the Keyboard Chronicles, a podcast for keyboard players. I'm your host, David Holloway, and I'm thrilled as always to be here with you. Apologies for my voice. I've got a bit of man flu at the moment. Person who doesn't have the man flu and is in full voice is Mr. Mick Michaeli. Now, this was a real thrill for us to speak with Mick because as a child of the 80s, and I know a lot of you out there are of a similar era, as we talk about in the show, there aren't many more iconic keyboard riffs than the Final Countdown by Europe. There's Jump and there's a couple of others for sure, but this one is right up there. Now, as you'll hear, Mick has been with Europe pretty much since their inception, so from about 1984. But his career and Europe's career is so much more than what you may expect. Europe have continued to release great albums regularly since the 80s. I know I've listened to all of them and I enjoy it. And for those that particularly like a harder edge to rock, you may be quite surprised if you haven't listened to Europe since their first handful of albums, just how much they've changed, and it is very much worth listening. So we talked to Mick about his career with Europe, his work with Glenn Hughes, and his love for other musical projects. So, yeah, I think you'll enjoy this a great deal, and I'll talk to you at the end of the show. Mick, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, sir. How are you this fine evening?
I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, really good. I'm really looking forward to this too. I've checked out a few of your other guests you've had, and it's really interesting, I have to say.
No, it's a pleasure to have you. And I know you've had quite a busy year this year, Mick. I mean, just looking at just alone your tour dates with Europe, you played a hell of a lot of dates this year and you're already booking into next year. How's 2024 gone for you so far?
It's been a good year. I mean, we've been to Southeast Asia, we've been to Japan, Taiwan, and been doing, as we always do in the summer, a lot of festivals around Europe. So it's been a busy year, but a very good year. We really had a blast doing it.
Yeah. No, that's great. And just, I didn't ask you this before we started recording, but have you been to Australia?
We have been once.
Yeah.
And that was, I'm really bad at sort of keeping track of time, but maybe about 8 to 10 years ago, we were in Australia, played about 5 or 6 dates, and actually myself and me and some members of the crew stayed an extra week just to, we have the flights, and why not stay for a while and check out Australia.
No, that's great. Well, hopefully we get you back at some stage. So I do want to start off with, Mick, just a bit about your musical upbringing. So as a child and a teenager, what got you into music in the first place?
Oh, there was always music around in my home. And my dad was really interested in music, mainly classical music. And my mother was actually a professional singer. She sang classical music and modern pieces as well, modern classical pieces and opera and stuff like that. So that was her profession. So I got a lot of music, not popular music, not that kind of not what was popular back then, what you heard on the radio really, but more like classical and stuff like that. So, and we had a piano at home, so I started playing early, trying it out,
And did you take lessons at that stage? And what was your experience with formal lessons, if you did take them?
I had a few lessons, both on guitar and also keyboard. But I never, I didn't really like it. It was just another homework, and I never learned how to read music. So I did everything by ear, more or less.
It's a good club to be in, Mick, the by ear club. So no, I'm hearing
Yeah.
it. No, that's great. And so, was there a first band at school or outside of school that you got involved in that really fired up your passion for that type of work?
Well, my first band was about 12, 13 years old, and I played guitar in that band and I sang. And we didn't play any shows. We just rehearsed in the drummer's uh, boy room. We mainly played Black Sabbath and Status Quo covers. That was about it. Because those songs were quite easy to play and sing at the same time. But then it sort of moved on, and I played with a lot of different bands. There was a big, where I grew up in a suburb just north of Stockholm. It was a big, I mean, the music was happening everywhere, and there was a lot of people just playing and moving on and changing bands. And I mean, if you walk down the streets, you heard one band rehearsing over there, another band rehearsing over there. So it was a big thing. But then there was the first band that really started to happen. We were called Avalon, and by then I just played keyboards and I stopped singing. Thank God.
And do you remember what keyboards you were playing then, Mick? What was your first keyboard you thought, I'm really liking this?
Yeah, the first one was something called, it was a Korg, and it was called Polyphonic Ensemble.
Oh, yeah.
And it had a few presets, and they sounded about the same, all of them. And then I traded that, and I got a Fender Rhodes
Wow.
piano. And but by the time I started playing with this band Avalon, which was just before I joined Europe, I had a Poly 6. Yeah.
Nice. No, great. All right. Well, then let's talk
Yeah.
about. I have seen in a previous interview you jokingly referred to the fact that you joining Europe was only because that you might have been one of the only keyboard players the guys knew when it was time for you to come on board. So, but do tell us about how that initial. Did you have to formally audition, or just you knew the guys already? How did that come about?
We played in the same places, just very small clubs in the suburb, because we grew up in the same suburb, all of us, and so it was they'd seen me play, and so one day it was I think must have been when Europe released the Wings of Tomorrow album. Joey had played some keyboards on that album, and he didn't want to do that live. So they asked me if I'd just not join as a member, but as a just standing very far on the side and play some keyboards on the show. And that's how it all started. And I played for a few months, and then they actually asked me to join the band permanently.
Right. And so it was, you obviously previously, I love the fact that originally you were standing offside of stage like, I don't know, Spike Edney and Queen, or the guy from Green Day or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's funny. And so just for those of I can't imagine there's any listeners or viewers out there that aren't aware of Europe, right? That you're such a world dominating band who's continued to put out amazing albums all through the 21st century, and even late last year's single. We'll link to it in our show notes, everyone viewing, but the Hold Your Head Up single is just amazing, both the clip and the song. What you've been now a band for more than 40 years. Yes, you had a hiatus there, but what's changed as far as your love of music and the band? What's kept it fresh and interesting for you?
As you mentioned, we had a sort of a 12-year coffee break in the 90s, and small part of the beginning of the what do you say, the 20th? Did you say that?
Yeah.
Okay, and so and when we discussed if we were putting the band together or not around 2003, probably, so it was like a consensus that if we're going to do this, we're not going to go back and try and sound like we used to do in the 80s. We wanted to feel that what we do is fresh and that we don't want to have anyone tell us what to do. So we decide 100% what we're going to put out, which we didn't do on the last album that came out in 91. There was a kind of a sort of a thing going on with the record company back then. So I think what we do now is just whatever we feel like, which is fantastic. And that's, I think, is a reason why we still can do albums and do new music. And actually, we've done more albums now than before the long coffee break. So
that's right, which is amazing on its own. And you've raised a really good point there that I want to follow up on, and that is you decided that you would all have a say in what goes on. So how does I'm even in my own limited way, and all of our listeners of yours tend to be in bands or may have been in bands. We all understand the dynamics of bands can be challenging. How have you made the democracy of that band or the working relationship work so well the past 21, 22 years?
Well, it doesn't always work that well. But that's part of it too. It has to be. You have to allow everyone to say whatever they think, and then, but somehow we managed to have some kind of consensus. I know, for example, Joey, who writes he used to write almost 90% of the material back in the beginning, but now he's still the main writer, and he also the singer. So he has a big say on what songs he feels like he can contribute with his vocal to. But apart from that, we're still just trying to be. Actually, it has a lot to do with accepting that you work with 4 other morons, and if everybody accepts that, it might work. And it's worked for us so far.
I love it. Yeah, no, that's a great perspective. I'm guessing as we all get older, we get more tolerant and accept each other's idiosyncrasies. So yeah, I think that's a great perspective. So I do need to ask you, Mick, about your keyboard rig and so on. And I'm going to use the last single and also the last album in 2017, Walk the Earth. There is some amazing organ work and some more traditional keyboard instruments that flow through. I mean, just love some of the songs. Kingdom United has some beautiful organ work in it and so on. So just tell us a little bit about, now that you do tour and do lots of festivals, what is your keyboard rig and what did you have to incorporate from your newer work to make that work?
All right. So basically, I use on the albums, I try to incorporate as much Hammond organ as possible, because that's still think that's a magnificent instrument, and also especially if we're talking vintage stuff or stuff that's always been there, almost always, but you know what I mean. I've also, on the last 2 albums, I've been using a lot of mellotron as well, because there's a digital new one, obviously, that works really well. Unfortunately, I cannot take that on tour because a lot of the songs we do are half step down. But I actually watched one of your shows where I don't remember his name. I'm terrible at names, David. I remember you.
That's okay.
But apart from that, the guy played with I think he played with the Cult.
Mike Mangan. Yeah,
Mike, and he found out this way to detune a Hammond a half step down.
That's right.
With just a little pedal, and I thought, all right, maybe I can bring my Hammond and the mellotron on the next tour.
Great.
So yeah, so that was really helpful, but what I'm using now is it's a Nord Lead 3. That's an old one, but I just love it. It's just perfect for me. I don't understand all the knobs, but I'm trying to work my way through it. And I have a stage, Nord Stage 3, and also have an old Roland Phantom X7, which is the button doesn't really work anymore, so I can't edit anything. It's just the old sound, so I have to find a way to sort of phase it out and just put everything. But I'm a lazy guy, so I keep I keep the old keyboards as long as I can, because otherwise I have to sort of remake the sounds on another keyboard, which is time consuming.
It is. It's very time consuming, and it's a lot of work given, across all of your albums, but particularly those first 3 or 4. There's such iconic sound sets. It must be a real pain to recreate those. So essentially for all those really distinctive earlier sounds, you're running them off the Phantom, or you, and then I assume MIDI'd up to your Nords as needed.
Yeah. I use, for example, the Final Countdown sound is obviously sampled.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, what I have to do with a lot of the other sounds as well. Try to sample them as much as I can for example, the stage, which I find really handy to work with. Stage 3, I mean.
And with the Phantom, I can imagine that is a challenge, having to sort of transition to a new instrument. I mean, the obvious one is going to the new Phantoms, but that's not simple as far as just, transferring sound. So I can understand the reluctance to change.
But it has to be done.
It has to be done.
I tried to get it to the workshop and ask them, could you fix this for me? It's going to cost me a fortune to do it, so I might as well find something else.
And do you, I mean, when you're touring, I'm assuming you have to have backup, further copies of keyboards. Like, I'm sure you're not just sitting on one Phantom X7 with all your key sounds and no backup option.
Yeah, I have 2 of everything, basically. So there's and also it's good to have. I mean, sometimes we do shows in one place, and then there's a very long distance to the next one, and the truck with all the gear is not going to make it. So then another truck has to go with a B rig to that place. But I usually bring, especially with the Phantom X7, I definitely, as much as I can, I always have 2 with me all the time, and same goes for the Nord Lead 3.
And so across the Europe set list, and what are the more challenging songs for you to play technically? So like myself, as you said, you're a by-ear player, obviously a highly accomplished player. What are the more challenging songs for you to play that each night, if not give you stress, at least make you sort of focus to make sure you can get through them okay?
It's usually what the problem I have, the songs that makes me a bit nervous is when I have a keyboard intro, and I'm supposed to play it right, and sometimes, usually just flows with a muscle memory, but sometimes my brain just freezes, and that happened actually a while ago. I think it was this summer when I Carrie, which starts with a just piano intro, and I just it just died, and so I I said to the audience, because I sing backup, so I'll always have a microphone. So I said to them, all right, guys, what you just experienced is what we musicians refer to as a major fuck up. So please let me start again. And I actually stole that from Peter Gabriel, because he did that on a tour a long time ago. He said exactly that, because he fucked up too. But that what can you do? And then there's always sometimes there's a solo. Those are the main things when you're sort of, when the focus is on you. That's the most difficult parts for me.
Yeah, and
But
I think you've warmed the hearts of players all around the world with that, Mick, because it is, I think, something we all experience. And I'm sure you'll agree, the more you think about the upcoming intro or solo, the less likely you are to nail it, that you need to step back and rely on the muscle memory. I totally get it.
yeah.
And just as an aside for your amusement, I mean, you are responsible for something you play all the time, whether it's Carry the Final Countdown or all those first 3 or 4 albums. You are responsible for some of the most iconic riffs from that period. And over the weekend, I played in a band The Final Countdown for the first time, and I stuffed it up. So I just love the fact that I'm talking to you a few days later. So it's wonderful.
All right, there you go.
And have you ever had, I mean, you've just sort of described a really great train wreck there of, forgetting a solo. Is there another example across your career where something's gone spectacularly wrong that you can look back and laugh at it now?
We haven't had a lot of major things going wrong, but I remember one time. This is really interesting. Everyone in the band wears in-ear, except for the guitar player, because he's got his own little piece of reality somehow. But everyone else uses it, and you know how it works. You plug in your ears, plug them in, and you have a belt pack, and then you can sort of, the volume you can change yourself, the overall volume, but that's it. Then you have the monitor guy sort of, and nowadays you have really good boards, so they can pre-program everything, so you have almost your perfect sound every day. Maybe you have to change a little thing, but at this point, there was one I don't remember where it was. Probably erased it from my memory, but we when this show started, everything sounded wrong. I mean, it almost sounded good, but Joey's voice was this loud, and I couldn't really hear my keyboards the way I usually hear them. So I say to the monitor guy, I just take Joey's voice down, have my keyboards up. And then I see Joey going, take the keyboards down. I need to hear my voice. And so this poor monitor guy, he raises Joey's voice, but that's in my ears.
Oh, no. So
we switched belt pack. For some, just when we went on stage, we had switched the belt packs, So then I just ripped them out and, had to rely on the side fills or whatever. But that was a trauma for a while. But someone then had there was panic amongst the crew, but one of the guys just thought, oh, maybe they've switched belt packs. And yes, we had.
Wow, that's amazing.
That was really terrible. That was really when you start the show, you want everything to just work, and you want to give everything you have, and then it's just terrible.
Yeah,
everything sounds like I don't know, mayhem.
It definitely affects the enjoyment of playing as well. So no, totally understand that. And what does keep it enjoyable for you touring now, Mick? I mean, how do you manage fatigue? I mean, I'm sure you spread out your dates where you can and so on, but touring can be hard work. How do you manage that nowadays when you're not 20 anymore?
That's true. Back in those days, you could do whatever and go wherever, and you were just going for it. Nowadays, we try to take it easy. I mean, we we don't party as much as we used to do. We try to. I mean, sometimes it's sometimes we there is kind of a few days of really lot of traveling. But I mean, it's not the playing that's exhausting. It's the traveling and the waiting and that doing nothing. That's what really sort of gets you. And so but we're trying to not do too long tours and to get back home, have a few breaks. And so that's how we try to do it these days. And I mean, when I get home after a tour, I'm tired for a few days, but it's as long as you don't do it to the extent that you feel that you don't want to do this, and I don't want to do this anymore.
That's right.
You know, as long as you still think you're having a good time, which I think, well, I do anyway.
Good.
To speak for myself. So yeah, I think we find a good balance between being on tour and not doing too many shows in a row, especially for Joey's sake, because he's a singer. So he really needs a break. It's usually like 3 days in a row for him, and then 1 day off, and then we can go on again. And sometimes he can stretch it to 4 days, but I really, he takes care of himself really well.
Yeah, obviously by the power of his voice still, he obviously does. And so, I mean, talking about enjoying it, so there is a bit of what I call a grass is greener on the other side with touring, in that when you're on tour, you may dream of going home. How long after you get home do you start dreaming of touring again? Or at this stage of your career, that doesn't tend to happen?
Well, for me, I'm going to be honest with you. I rarely long for going on tour.
That's what.
For me, it is writing music and being in the studio. That's my main thing. That's what sort of brings health to my soul. And I so I could live without touring, but unfortunately, you don't make money, or we don't make money out of records anymore.
No.
So touring is one thing that we have to do. So what I sort of try to do when we're going on tour is trying to, if we have a day off, if we're somewhere, I just want to go be a tourist, go sightseeing, just take walks in the town we're in, or hang out with the guys that I enjoy hanging out with, and just that's more, because touring is, as touring is, I don't know, 2% being on stage. Sorry, 2%. And the rest is waiting or traveling. And, that's how it is.
Yeah.
So you just how to make, you have to make the best of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's nothing glamorous about the 23 hours of the day, or 22 hours of the day you're not playing. Totally understand. And let's talk about, you just talked about how you love being in the studio and writing music. So let's talk about your broader career. So both during the hiatus, and I assume now you're involved in other projects. I do need to just quickly cover off Glenn Hughes, because we have a running joke, including Mike Mangan that you've mentioned. We have a running joke on the show of the secret cabal of Glenn Hughes organists, and you're now the fourth organist that's come on the show that has played for Glenn. So he obviously has an attraction. Just tell us about that period of time and what you learnt from that.
To start with, when we first met Glenn, I mean, I grew up with Deep Purple and later with Trapeze as well. So when I got the question to play with him, I was just, wow, one of your idols from when you grew up. And so that was really fantastic. And his voice was fantastic and still is, which is amazing. So I that was really a thrill. Unfortunately, at the time, he had a manager that probably didn't do him any good, really. So there was a bit of economical issues when we finished the tour. But I actually met him this summer, and we hugged each other, and good to see you, and all that. And I still love the guy, and it was amazing to play with one of your teenage heroes, and he's still a hero to me. So that was amazing.
I can testify to his ongoing brilliance in that it's literally a week ago today I saw him perform live. He's just finished an Australian tour, and as far as him recognising people that have formerly played for him, two of those four keyboard players, obviously Mike on stage, but one of the other ones was also in the audience watching the show, and there's a lot of love in that room for him as a person. And the other thing, just for your reference, Mick, is he had awful in-ear problems at the gig last week. So as you can tell, it doesn't matter how big you get, whether you're Europe or Glenn Hughes, you never get over the in-ear problems. He struggled with them for an hour, was a total pro throughout, but it was really throwing him. You wouldn't know from his voice, but it was really throwing him. Yeah. So, and so tell us about what other projects, I mean, obviously you do, as you said, you contribute to the writing in Europe on albums, but tell us what writing and stuff you've been doing over the last few years and any projects you've got planned coming up.
Oh, actually, a few years ago, I started to get into American music, like country music, Nashville, that stuff. So I've been sort of starting to dig into that a lot more, and that's a totally different thing that we're doing in Europe. But I really enjoy doing something totally different, and if you start listening to that music, I really don't know how to say that what genre it is. If it's country or Americana, I'm not really sure, but kind of what music I'm talking about, and it's so different from Europe, but it's so great to dig into that. And there's so many brilliant musicians playing on those kind of records, and I started to really enjoy the music and also the storytelling, the way they write lyrics, and I'm trying to dig into that. And I've just a few years back started to write more into that vein. I have a friend who I write with, and we've sort of reached out to people in the US also, and also we worked briefly with a girl from Ireland, and so that's one thing I've been doing. I also write film score for films that hasn't been released yet. So I don't know what to do with it, but I really I love listening to music when I see a film, and so I just for my own pleasure, I kind of play and try to do this little, just small pieces that could be for a film, but I don't know how to get it out, and I don't know any film producers or anything. So that's just for my own pleasure, really.
Which is great. I mean, and you've obviously got a brilliant, I'm not sure whether that's your home studio there, but there's certainly keyboards in the background. So what do you use at home to create? I can see you've got a Nord there. I'm not sure what's on the top there. It looks like it's either a Nectar or a Casio or something.
It's a Mellotron.
Oh, it's the Mellotron. Of course, it's the new, of course. Yeah. I'm just trying to work out with the white body. Yeah, of course. Okay.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Well, I usually just use when I play at home. I mainly use just software.
Yeah.
and so I have a MIDI keyboard, and then I just use plugs.
And do you
So
have some plugins that you particularly love, Mick? What are some that you love using, if you happen to remember?
Oh yeah, I I don't like having too much stuff because I'll sit for hours and go through sounds, and that sort of kills some of the um, some of the fun, some of the creative process. But you have to do it to find the right sounds. But recently, I tried, the Vienna
Oh, yeah.
strings plug, and I didn't really understand how it worked properly. So recently I bought the Spitfire, I think it is, that has the BBC orchestra, which
Nice.
is really easy for me to work with. And so I've been using that a lot. Then I use a lot of I mainly work in Logic when I work at home. I can work in Pro Tools as well, but mainly use Logic. And I use a lot of that stuff that's in there. But I do realize that if I would do it for real, for example, the piano sounds are so overused, and there are plugins which sound so much better. So if I'm going to do something for real, I have to get something else as well.
Yeah. No, great. And just going back briefly, when you're touring with Europe and that, you're not using any computers or stuff. You're pretty much switching sounds manually between songs.
Yeah, I have I have a I use a computer just to change sounds
Switch, yeah.
on all the keyboards, because I can't, because we usually change songs or change the order of the songs, so it's really good to have that and just prepare before the show. Okay, now I know I'm just going to press this for the next song. And we actually have a computer, or actually two, there's a backup for, we have some backing tracks going on for intros, and also some percussive or effects, I'd say, that we use. I could probably do it myself, but it's so good to just concentrate on playing what you're supposed to play.
No, absolutely. And now I've got a very deep question, Mick. As someone who's got an ongoing and extensive career, and you've seen in recent years the challenge of streaming, and as you've said yourself, Europe probably don't make a lot of money out of albums anymore, like any other act around the world. It's all about the touring. How do we keep music human in this era of AI? How do we make sure that all of us are still, doing wonderful things with music in a human way, and it's not overtaken by the technology?
Oh, that's a tough one. I really don't know. No one really knows what's going to happen. And the thing is that AI is just starting really now. I mean, it's been developed for a long time, but now it's out there. But I think there's so much happening, and this that technique is going forward, and it's, I don't know, a lot of things going to happen. I mean, I listened to one thing, where AI was supposed to sort of produce a Beatles song.
Yep.
That if they would do a song that, if they all four were together and they were writing a song, it would sound like this, and it sounded like shit. It didn't sound anything like the Beatles. But the thing is I don't know where it's going to go. But the thing is, so far, the live scene, it hasn't really been taken over by AI so far, and so I think that's the important thing that we have to sort of try and keep for what it is. I mean, okay, we you have the avatars. ABBA has done this show, and I think that the Kiss is going to do it soon.
That's right.
And but apart from that, it's on one hand, it's really interesting and it's intriguing, but it's a bit scary
Yeah.
at the same time. I don't know if you look at the music on the charts right now. It's I'm sure you could do a lot of that music with AI, and someone is going to make a lot of money of it, but it's not the musicians, you know.
No. Sadly, you're very correct there, I think. Yeah. And you just mentioned about the live scene. How encouraged are you by the number of younger people both playing in bands and going to see live music? So are you still seeing lots of younger people even coming to see bands long established like yourself?
Oh yeah, yeah. I love going to show, and you know, actually after the pandemic, I've been going even more, and I really love doing it. And there's I've seen some great acts, and I just love it. I mean, there was a time when I was a bit, all right, play a show for 1 hour, and then I get tired and I'm going out of there. But nowadays, I just want to see more. Um, so yeah, I love watching both bands I already know about and also bands that I'm not that familiar with. You know, I think it's just, to me, that's really how, and it's just a one-off thing. You just see one time, and you know, you get an experience. And I you know, my daughters are in their late 20s right now, and sometimes they call me and say, "Hey, Dad, do you want to go see this band?" And I'm like, "I never heard them." "Well, check them out and come on." "All right, yeah, sure, yeah, I'll come." And it's given me great pleasure to do that.
Yeah.
And I also want to, I just want to support the live scene.
Yeah, that's great, and I think if we all do that, it's got a lot of longevity in it yet. And I do need to ask, you know, as someone that has been well established for a number of decades, would you have any guidance for any younger musicians who may want to make a career in music? What would your tips or thoughts for them be?
Oh, that's really difficult, but I would say, try to find. Don't try to imitate. I mean, of course, you do that in the beginning. You do that, but try to find your own way, and above all, um, have fun with everything you do. It has to be fun, because if you don't have fun, or you know, feel that you're creating something, if you deliberately try to write a hit, forget it. Just if you feel you have something going on, yeah, sure, work on it. And if you, as long as you have, if you have a passion for it, you have to have the passion. Otherwise, I'd say, sorry, forget it.
Yeah. No, great perspective. Yeah, much appreciated. Now, speaking of passion and fun, let's get into the Desert Island Discs mix. So, the dreaded question: what are 5 albums, if you had to choose only 5, would you choose?
Oh yeah. Oh, I always have troubles with trying to find that, but I'll try, and I'll try to start doing it in a kind of a chronological order. Um, but the first band, the first rock, since as I told you, when I grew up, there was a lot of classical music and stuff in my home, and the first sort of popular music I heard was the Beatles, and I got an album from my mother. She bought me an album. It was called Oldest But Goldest, and it was a collection of the songs between 64 and 66 or something like that. And then with my own money, I bought Let It Be. It was the first album I bought. But then I heard Abbey Road, and that really freaked me out. So I have to mention Abbey Road, and that was 69. That was released. Then I had a sort of a journey with Genesis, and Yes, and all that. But one album that really meant a lot to me, also as a keyboard player, that was Emerson, Lake and Palmer trilogy. And then, I went through phases. I listened to everything, punk rock and everything. But I have to mention Frank Zappa as well. And I could choose Apostrophe. I could choose any of the albums from the 70s, basically. And I really have to mention Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here as well. I think that was a brilliant album. Actually, it was a really interesting story. I was on vacation in England, and I went to this record store, and I saw an album with a cow on the front, and it didn't say anything. And I was just drawn to that. And so I said to the guy working in the shop, I want that. How old was I? 75, 13, 14 years. And I want that one with the cow. I didn't know anything about it, but I just wanted that album. And he said, well, last year they released this album. This is the latest one. You should have that one. And I was like, but okay. And that was Wish You Were Here. And that was just, okay.
Yeah.
And it's a brilliant album, I think.
It is.
I had really troubles with the fifth one because it could have been Iggy Pop, could have been the Swedish band Ghost, which I think is very brilliant band, one of the best bands that are now. Could have been Rammstein, could have been David Bowie. I love David Bowie. But I just want to sort of pick one album that I think is a bit overlooked sometimes. And it's a band called Talk Talk, a British band.
Oh, yeah.
And the album is called Spirit of Eden. And it was released in 88, I believe. Back in those days, the 80s sound, it was big snare drums and, everything was like in retrospect, I'm not a big fan of a lot of the sounds in the 80s, or especially the late 80s. But this album, it sounds like they had just two mics in a room and they was just jamming, and it was totally out of time. And I think it's a fantastic album. It's a bit tough. It's kind of an acquired taste if you want, but I just want to bring the album Talk Talk Spirit of Eden, bring it up, and that's my 5 albums, I guess.
Great, great picks, Mick, including Talk Talk. Yeah, great band and very much underestimated outside of the UK sometimes. So great picks. And then we have our final question, which is our quick fire 10. So 10 short and sharp answers to some, what I hope are not too hard questions. The first album you ever heard, if that's possible. It sounds like it might have been classical, but do you recall the first album you did hear?
The first album I heard, well, that was probably the Brandenburg concerts, Bach. But the one I really listened to over and over again was Oldest But Goldest, the Beatles album.
No, great.
Yeah.
Your most important pre-gig ritual. So what is something you do before a big gig to feel balanced before you go on stage?
I just basically try to be by myself and not do anything. Just, check the set list, because we have a kind of a habit of changing it around for no reason at all, but we do. So just checking everything is in place and not eat too much before. And that's about it.
You've just raised a question. I'm just going to sort of go off onto a little bit of a tangent. With Europe, you've obviously got a huge discography. When you go out on a tour, I'm assuming you're not rehearsing the whole discography. No band would tend to do that. But do you have a stable of songs that, you give yourself flexibility to change around on any given night?
Yeah, we do. We try to sort of more or less if we rehearse, I have to say, because we don't always do that. But if we rehearse, we try to sort of do have a rehearse more songs that fits the show, so that we can pick and choose a little bit. And usually, if we do a tour of our own, we have sound checks. So then we can, if someone has an idea that we should put this song in, we can always rehearse it and sort of, oh, that's how it was. Yeah, all right, I remember now. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Mick, if you hadn't been a musician, what do you think your career choice would have been?
Oh, that's a tough one. I always was. At one point, I wanted to be a doctor, medical doctor, and I was interested. I was not as a big thing, but I was interested in architecture for a while. So that could have been one thing, but you know, I didn't have the grades, and so I don't I don't know. I don't
No,
really
that's
know.
fine. Well, it obviously worked out well, so that's the main thing. I think I know
Yeah, I was lucky.
I think I know the answer to this next one based on you saying that sometimes you tour, down half a step. Do you use the transpose button or do you adjust on the fly? I'm assuming there's a bit of transpose button use. I know I do.
Yeah, I just do it on the fly, and for some songs, you know, you can program the transpose pros thing as you change the sound. So the only problem I have that I have to do it manually is actually the Nord Lead 3. The other ones is I'm able to just press the program and I'm all good.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go for one of those pedals just in case that Mike talked about. Yeah.
Yeah. No, good stuff. If it's at all possible, what would be one of your favourite gigs that you've ever done? Doesn't matter whether it's Europe or elsewhere, just a gig that stood out to you as being particularly memorable.
Well, you know, the weird thing is that I would probably say that is when we did a club gig back in the 80s in Stockholm, and it was just announced as I don't even know what we call ourselves, but it was not Europe, you know, it was something totally different. And it's a small club, and we just go up there and play. We played a few covers, one Elvis cover, one Beatles cover, and some of our own songs as well. And that's, you know, that's a memorable thing because people weren't prepared that we were going to be there. It wasn't probably not even a rock audience, but it was really fun, and it was just on the fly, and it went down really well.
Great.
So playing in this little small club was fantastic.
No, that's amazing. And if it's possible as well, Mick, favourite city you've played or one of your favourite cities that you enjoy playing?
Oh, there's so many, you know. It's hard to nail a specific city, you know. I can nail it down to I love playing in Japan. I think it's fantastic. The audience is very different from the rest of the world, and especially very different from South America, for example, which is another place I love to play because the audience are just going crazy, and that goes for Italy and Spain as well. If you're talking about Europe, but so I can't really do that.
No, that's
I can't
okay.
really name a city, but there's different places that are really fantastic to play in. And
great. That's more than reasonable. Now this is another hard one. A favourite song. So you've just come off a fairly hefty tour. Some songs you have to play, others you have a bit of, a leeway on any given night. What is the favourite song, say in the Europe set list at the moment, that you look forward to playing, if any? There may not be any, but one that you particularly do enjoy.
Oh, there are a few really. There's one song that we did a few albums ago. It was way back, but there's a song called "No Stone Unturned" that I really like. Partly because it's a keyboard solo in the song, but also because it's a great composition. And to you might not believe me, but I really love playing the final countdown as
Okay.
well because it's not our song anymore. It belongs to the
Yeah,
audience, and they usually go just crazy,
that's right.
and you just feel that everybody gives something to everybody, and it's just amazing to play the song. I have to say
Yeah,
that.
and legitimately so. I mean, aside, like I think that song and Jump would be the two most iconic keyboard-driven songs of a whole decade. So I can understand why you still get joy out
Oh
of doing that.
yeah,
Yeah.
true,
Um,
true, yeah.
so, do you have a favorite music documentary or movie that you go back to?
Well, oh, I love documentaries. Um, I really thought that there's one on the Eagles, the band the Eagles. It's a two-part documentary, and I just love the fact that they are so honest and actually they just tell about all the frictions and everything that was going on in the band, and I really think that's how a documentary should be.
Yeah. No, great.
That's the one that sort of comes to mind and instantly.
Yeah, no, excellent. Name one thing that you'd like to see invented that would make your life as a keyboard player easier.
Ooh. Well, the little pedal is invented,
Yes.
so I can take that. Yeah. All right. All right. That would be to be able to clone one keyboard to any other keyboard. The sounds you
Yeah.
have in one keyboard, just be able to clone it to anything else. Because then I don't have to spend hours,
Yes.
sample or trying to recreate. So that be it.
Great. No, great pick. I love that. Yes, please, someone do that. And then finally, your favorite non-musical activity or hobby. What keeps you sane outside of music?
Basically, I think music is the only thing that keeps me sane. But oh man, wow! I don't have anything.
That's not a bad
Music is
thing.
the only thing I have. Jesus.
Oh,
I'm trying to keep in shape, but that's
yeah.
not because I like the actual thing, doing it, just because I feel good afterwards I've done it, But okay. Oh well, I like art. I like I like taking pictures and photography, and I like uh, beautiful things like beautiful paintings or sculptures, and that's
Yeah.
and nature,
Nature's
beautiful
great too.
nature.
Now, you do have some beautiful
Yeah.
sculptures behind me. I can obviously see Beethoven. I'm just wondering what the figure with the beard and the hat is. I'm trying to work out who that is. Or maybe no one.
Oh, that's. Oh, can you see them?
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay, that's Swedish Salvation Army.
Oh, there you go. It is too. That's great. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So my grandmother on my mother's side, she was a soldier in that
Salvation
kind of
Army.
army.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Amazing, amazing organisation. Mick, I cannot thank you enough. It's been an absolute honour and privilege. And we were talking before about you'd only been to Australia once. Hopefully we get you guys out here again. I know you've continued to make an impact even down here over the last 40 years. And so cannot thank you enough for your time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, and I really hope we can sort of meet up.
And there we have it. I hope you enjoyed that chat with Mick. I just loved his perspective and particularly his guidance for younger musicians, but also just his down-to-earthness as a musician. It's so lovely to hear. And as we talked about in the show, if you're like me and a weekend warrior who plays, a handful of gigs a year, it's not nice to hear because I wish it was better sometimes, but it's lovely to hear that we all experience some of the same challenges around sound on stage, in-ear monitors, things going wrong, trying to work out how to transfer sounds to new keyboards. It doesn't matter what pinnacle you get to, some of those things don't go away. So I always find that encouraging in some way. So again, thank you for listening, and a huge thanks to Mick for taking the time. He's an absolute gem, and hopefully we do see him down under at some stage again. In the meantime, I'd just like to give a quick shout out to our gold and silver supporters. So a huge thank you to Tammy from Tammy's Musical Stew. Thank you, Tammy, for your ongoing and long-term support. We also have Mike at midnightmastering.com. Cannot thank Mike for his support and the great work he does with mixing and mastering tracks. I use him personally for my own creative work, and I know others that do, and highly recommend him as well. And we also have the wonderful Dave Bryce and the team at the musicplayer.com forums, particularly the Keyboard Corner. Love hanging there. Great for a chat with like-minded individuals. So do check that out. And Mr. Dewi Evans from Wales, who we do appreciate, Dewi, your ongoing support. And as I've mentioned in a previous episode, we are going to do a live stream with Dewi. We had a test run, and that'll be happening hopefully before the end of the year. A huge thank you to you for listening this far as well, particularly you, Joe. In the meantime, keep on playing, and we'll be back very soon.